father eventually became a steel worker. My mother was a domestic for a long time. But of course, my father did some of everything because, again, he's unskilled. He quit school at second grade, basically because he had to, as he said, go to work. He had to indeed go to work with my grandfather and worked in the fields, always on the basis of scarcity. That we got clothes once a year. Let's just say it was clear that money was always an issue because there was never enough. And so
I grew up in Dallas, Texas, right here in Oak Cliff. That's my hood. My father was an air conditioner repairman back in the day when there were very few black people who actually did that job. It was right when it was the beginning of the integration, the end of segregation. He was the son of a maid, so therefore we were entrusted with being very conservative and being very frugal with our money.
Money was always an issue in our family because I grew up poor in a public housing project. So you can well imagine we didn't have much. And so money was always an issue, especially with 6 kids and trying to take care of them and make ends meet, and especially with my father not working consistently and my mom having 2, 3, and 4 jobs to help pull it all together. We have a long, sordid history in this country that unfortunately has us as a people behind a lot. And so we have a lot of catching up to do.
Both my mom and my dad, they were government employees. And, that's where I learned about budgeting is from them. I went ahead and I would watch them sit down at the kitchen table, throughout the week, any given time with their yellow memo pad, and would go through and write out all of their bills and expenses and everything. And then as their paychecks would come in, then they would check it off, and then they would also balance their checkbook.
Like the way that we grew up in my neighborhood, like the average household income was probably somewhere between 10 to 25,000, right? So in my household, money, the way that in which people in my neighborhood used money or talked about money, it was more so an object that they used to pay bills. Anything outside of that, money wasn't discussed. If it wasn't about bills, it wasn't about anything. A very impoverished community, very impoverished background, and financial literacy was the last thing on people's minds because they were just trying to survive. So.
My dad is a physician and my mom's an attorney. At a certain age, I started to sort of have questions about, well, I've taken all of this for granted my entire life, that I knew that I had a safety net. And I think that is often the difference between generational wealth being passed on and people without generational wealth really struggling, because you can be totally uneducated about finances, and if you have a safety net, well, then it's totally fine.
I remember the first time I found out what a salary was. Most of the folks around me had a job that they clocked in and out of and got a check every 2 weeks for. So I was even more shocked when I found out people made money without actually working. Crazy, right? I had many moments like this as a young black woman from a traditionally low-income neighborhood, finding my place at a private university, in corporate America, and several other spaces with very few people who looked like me. Generation Wealth is my financial journey and that of several others. Through our shared histories, hurdles, and hope, we uncover lessons and economic tools that will help our communities thrive for generations to come.
It's really unfortunate that there's so much cold hard evidence of just rampant economic and housing discrimination in Dallas for well over a century.
In the 30s, there's this Great Depression, as you know. And again, my parents grew up during this depression. So a lot of the African Americans who were living in rural Louisiana, Texas, and Oklahoma, they come to Dallas looking for work because there's none in these rural communities. Then when they get here, there's no housing because of residential segregation. They can't just move in and stay anywhere they want, even if they have the money. So one of the situations that develops in the 30s, mid-30s, 1935, 1936, is that you had African Americans living on the banks of the Trinity River in cardboard boxes and metal scraps. There's no sanitation. It's a mess on the banks of the Trinity River because that's where they're forced to live because the city has not built any housing projects and they can't move into white communities. They literally get run out. And there's a law. Well, not a law. They passed a law in 1916 that said that blacks and whites could not live in the same city blocks. So, of course, the Supreme Court eventually strikes that law down in another case that occurs in Louisville, Kentucky. But they then, of course, resort to restrictive covenants. When whites would buy houses, there's a restrictive covenant in it or a statement that says you will not sell this house to a Negro, a Mexican, or anyone who is not of the white race. Now, since it's a deed and it's a contract between two people and not something that the state enforces or the city enforces anymore, it can stand because it's just between two individuals.
Highways that went straight through the neighborhood and really broke parts of the neighborhood apart from each other and made it incredibly difficult to sort of have an ordinary commercial or residential neighborhood. And no real thought was given to the people who lived in the neighborhood.
The old Central Railroad cut and split through South Dallas, took neighborhoods out. When it took certain neighborhoods out, took homes out where we drive every day, going on Central Expressway, there used to be somebody's house. And when it took people's houses out, it took community. Houses, community, businesses.
And so through the 1970s, that became the new norm for the neighborhood. And that period lasted so much longer than the downswing that got them there. It became so entrenched. If you look at the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, into the 2000s on the same block, it is amazing because the liquor stores change location, the gas stations stay but the owners change. And it is this pattern of inconsistent business ownership, liquor stores, and a lot of abandoned buildings. And once you have abandoned buildings in a neighborhood that no longer has thriving businesses, it can feel impossible to pick up economic development because who wants to be the first person to put a ton of money into repairing a building when every other building is dilapidated?
So one of my first jobs was when I was actually in college, and I worked at the student union. I went to the University of California at Berkeley on a full academic scholarship, but also I was able to get this job at the student union because I just wanted some extra spending money, and then wanted to be able to help my younger brothers and sisters out. And of course, my mom, who had a few jobs, but I just wanted to help out.
I was going to school in the Philippines. I think I was in first grade, and my mom, I approached her because I saw my classmates buying snacks at school, and so when I got home, I asked my mom if I could have some bayad, which is allowance, so that I could buy some snacks at school, and she said, without hesitation, it's just quick, she said, I will give you money, but not to buy snacks. I'll give you money, and you could go to the market, which is every Tuesday, and you can buy something and sell it to your friends, and then eat your profit. And I did that, And it was so fun, and I fell in love with entrepreneurship since then. But it taught me so much about saving my money for making a little bit more later.
I got a full-time job with Fisher Body. Fisher Body used to make the bodies for Buicks and Chevrolets and Oldsmobiles and so on. It's a General Motors corporation. So started at $3.52 an hour. You see how I even remember the exact wage. And I was rich. My goodness, I couldn't believe it. I almost didn't go to college because I was making at that time what I thought was so much money. And of course, I'm spending it on clothes. Again, never had any clothes. So I'm spending it on clothes. I'm buying records. I'm buying books. I've always loved to read. So it took a while for me to figure out how to save.
I definitely didn't have this concept that I should be saving money until the money was my own, until I was in college and started earning my own paycheck, but realizing how little that paycheck was in comparison to how my parents were bankrolling my life. It's almost this feeling of, wow, it's almost embarrassing to realize that, wow, what I'm bringing in is this, and then what I am spending is this. And how do I change that, even though my parents are happy to support me through my education? How do I bring myself into a realistic spending pattern so that when I don't have that to rely on anymore, I can actually function as a self-sufficient person? And it was a bit of a wake-up call.
The hurdles that I experienced really started out with, student loans. Also struggled with, payday loans as well. I got introduced to that through, family members and whatnot, and watching them do that. And, that ended up leading me to file bankruptcy. At that time, I had about 12 to 13 payday loans going on at one time. I was in that robbing Peter to pay Paul cycle.
Many of us have learned about money through some pretty tough lessons. And while our mistakes can cause long-term damage, it is vital that you know that it is never too late to start your journey to financial freedom. The key is to listen and, most importantly, learn.
To try to save 50% of your paycheck. Just save it. Obviously, put the 6% that gets matched, usually gets matched in 401k, and then save the rest and live off 50% of your paycheck.
I am a 401k administrator. And so what that means is just if a company needs a 401k, we are the vendor that they use to support that 401k for their employees. It was put in place as a retirement vehicle, a way for you to start setting aside money so that later when you're done working for that company, because remember back in the day, people would stay with their companies for 20 plus years. Then when you're done and working for that company, you would leave, you could have this giant nest egg waiting for you that you can continue to live off of. Now, where that needs to change today, and the 401k, though it is still this technical retirement vehicle, really, it's an investment platform.
If you can get that habit going early, then you can start to save up for a house, and you can save up for something that actually will give you value and give you a return later. And do that early. You don't have to be 40, 50, 60 years old to own a house. Try to do that in your 20s when you start working, or definitely in your 30s. And even when you're single, you don't have to be married. You don't have to be part of a dual income stream. You can take care of yourself if you save and truly realize the value of the dollar.
All sunshine and no rain makes a desert. And I like to think of that sometimes with finances. Sometimes it feels like you are a little bit constricted if you're making certain choices, but it's so essential just to understand a few basics because it changes the trajectory of your future.
So I'm a big fan in educating individuals in lower income communities to establish good credit. And it's going to be the best investment you can make because at some point maybe you want to start a business, right? You can get business credit. And with that business credit, which is originally is directly correlated to your personal credit, you can go out and get $100,000, $150,000 with just a simple investment of $1,500 to get your credit in order, and you just flip that to $150,000, right? And now you can take that $150 to purchase your first real estate property. Good debt is any type of debt that I can use to flip and make assets, right? So for example, good debt would be purchasing a home, right? You can purchase a home, let's just say for $150. So maybe your debt at that moment is $150,000. But if you sit on it or if you rent it out, that other individual is paying your mortgage for you. And if the market is favorable, just like with a stock, right? You could sell it in a year or so for maybe $170. And then you make $20,000 off of that quote unquote bad debt, right?
Having those life insurance policies. That's how a huge way in setting up those wills and trusts and protecting your assets when you're long and gone is going to help build that generational wealth.
The purpose of generational wealth and my commitment to its mission is to not only bring attention to the ugliness of discrimination that has plagued Black households and businesses for centuries. It's to provide space to share, connect, and build so that our communities can be propelled to success. Because financial freedom belongs to everyone, including us.
There are lots of people who want to make social change in Dallas. And I think the key component for failure is not to build a grassroots movement from the community itself. And the things that we see that are successful, places like Bonton Farms, St. Philip's, all of these, even though there are external people who maybe didn't grow up in South Dallas who are involved, so many of the people who are building those initiatives are longtime neighborhood residents who understand the problems because they live in the neighborhood.
It has the power to change the game. It has the power to put communities in a position where they are self-sustaining, where they can build their own businesses, where they can provide their own line of credit, where they can provide their own loans to people in the community, no matter what they look like.
A lot of us as Black people, we have this, I can do that on my own, or I can do this myself mentality and mindset. And it first starts off with humility, humbling yourselves to understand that you don't know it all, you can't do it all alone, and that you need community, right? I don't care any great man or woman in this world, they all have a sound team around them, a community of people that believe in the same vision and mission that they were on.
We have to be really smart about how we make our money, how we keep our money, how we grow our money, and how we teach our children to value money.
Start having the conversations within your circle and holding each other accountable, I think will really go a long way. Having that sense of tribe around you.
We have a spirit in our family, in our culture, that we help everybody. Everybody is helped.
But for me to change my family dynamic, it has to start with me. It has to start with investing. It has to start with saving. Even if it's 5% of whatever I have, something is better than nothing.
Some of us give time and talent, but some of us also have treasure to give. So that's number one. We are responsible for giving back. And then we have to hold each other accountable. Accountable to, for making sure we are spending money the right way, that we are being good stewards over fruit.
Bernard Kinsey, the owner, gave this lecture making the argument that if young people know where they're from, it'll change their attitude so that there won't be this violence and resentment and this disruption in the school system if they're part of the curriculum. So I see myself, kid, being liberated as a freedom girl, being able to contribute then to helping these young people find out who they are.
Let's break it down to something very simple. Let's help people understand that just getting started, that's the biggest step. People think that, if I start, then I don't know what to do next. That part's easy.
More safe spaces need to be created to allow us to have these candid conversations about money, even also mental health as well. Because that goes hand in hand. That goes hand in hand.
It is fascinating that if you are not born in the right zip code or born in the right experience, the barriers are so much higher just to achieve the same outcome as sort of an average middle-class white person.
Generational wealth means to me the ability to pass along wealth instead of passing on bills. generational wealth means to me not raising up money to go to a funeral or to put a funeral on, but having a celebration of that person's life and their legacy.
And it's the whole issue of teaching somebody to fish and giving them a fish. I think I have to do both. I have to give them something, but I also have to make sure that I have equipped them with the tools to generate their own wealth while also giving them some of mine. I have to pass it on to the next generation in more ways than one.
Generation wealth is not just about money. It's about enabling communities to be financially secure so that they can live and breathe true freedom.